The film begins in a hospital with an elderly woman named Daisy taking her dying breaths. Daisy is accompanied by her daughter, Caroline, who is there to ease her mother's final moments. Daisy wants to reveal something to her, so she tells her a story from 1918 about a blind guy named Monsieur Gatto. Gatto was a blind yet remarkable clockmaker. Authorities assigned him the task of creating a magnificent clock for their newly built train station. Gatto began manufacturing the clock, but the World War broke out at the same time, and the country's young men went off to fight. Gatto's lone son was among them. A few weeks later, when the war finally ended, some soldiers returned alive, while others, like Gatto's son, died as martyrs. He was extremely devastated after learning of his son's death, yet he kept working at his job as a clockmaker for the local authorities. After a few months, he completed the clock for the station, but when it was unveiled to the public, they were all puzzled since the clock worked anti-clockwise. Some people claimed that Gatto made a mistake with the clock, to which he responded that he had done it on purpose in the hopes that, like this clock, the time would reverse and the martyrs would come back to life. Everyone knew it couldn't happen, but they could feel Gatto's agony and allowed the clock to be installed at the station. Some days after creating that exquisite clock, Gatto mysteriously vanished, and rumors spread that he went on a boat and drowned in the sea. Daisy, who is in the final stages of her life, is unable to talk anymore and instructs Caroline to pull a diary from her bag. Caroline brings that diary and is instructed by Daisy to read it. She initially denies it, claiming that she cannot read things at a time when her mother is about to die, but Daisy insists that it is her last wish that she read the diary in front of her. After hearing this from her mother, she begins to read the diary. The diary belongs to Benjamin Button, and the story begins on November 11, 1918, when World War I ends and people are celebrating a triumph. Amid a crowd of people partying, a man named Thomas Button crosses the street and rushes home. Thomas is thrilled because his wife is going to give birth today, boosting his happiness for the day. But when he gets home, his joy changes to sadness as the nurse informs him that his wife is likely to die because her health worsened after giving birth to a baby boy. He goes up to her and tries to comfort her, but she tells him she knows she's going to die. She begs Thomas to take proper care of their son, regardless of anything. Thomas asks her why he could ignore their son, but she dies before she can reply. Thomas is devastated by her passing and walks to see his son. Instead of being glad to see his son, he becomes shocked and hurries out with him. He decides to throw his infant into the lake, but he leaves when he notices a guard patrolling the area. Thomas is traumatized and does not want to keep his baby or violate his pledge to his wife. After some consideration, Thomas abandons his baby outside an old age home. After a few minutes, the owner of that old age home, a lady named Queenie, and her husband, Tizzy, notice a baby wrapped in a blanket at the door. She quickly picks up the newborn and takes him inside. Due to some medical issues, she is unable to give birth, so she immediately decides to adopt the baby. But Tizzy and Queenie are astonished to see that the infant does not look like a baby at all but rather like an older man preparing to die. His skin is like that of an elderly man in his late 90s. Even though he is not a normal baby, Queenie decides to adopt him as her son. The next morning, they call the doctor to see whether the infant had any skin problems. The doctor thoroughly checks the baby and informs them that the baby was born as an old guy and has almost all of the ailments that old guys have. Furthermore, the doctor advises Queenie to get rid of the kid because he may have been cursed by someone, but she defies the doctor's advice and embraces the baby as her own. She is relieved to be a mother and names her son Benjamin. After 5 years, Benjamin has grown up and appears to be an old bloke in his 80s. Although he appears to be old and unable to walk, he possesses the mind of a 5-year-old child. Due to his looks, the old men of the old age home regard him as their aged fellow, which he dislikes and frequently watches the children playing outside. He wants to play with them as well, but he can't even stand. Although Queenie makes every effort to make him feel like a normal child, he generally stays depressed as he wonders why he is different from other children. Queenie bathes him, plays with him, and reads him stories. She does everything she can to make him feel better. She even takes him to church in the hopes that the monk will remove the curse and he will be able to stand on his own. The monk reads something to him and instructs him to stand, which he does and miraculously stands for the first time. Everyone there begins to applaud and believe that the curse on him has been lifted. After a few days, an elderly lady and her granddaughter, Daisy, pay a visit to the old age home. Benjamin can't take his eyes off Daisy. Her blue eyes are so appealing to him that he can't see anything else. Because he doesn't appear like a child in any way, he is afraid to talk to Daisy, who is his age, but he overcomes his anxiety and finally interacts with her, and the two quickly become fast friends. They spent the entire day playing until Daisy's grandmother noticed them and took Daisy away from Benjamin. She has no idea Benjamin is a child because he does not appear to be one. Benjamin tries to tell her, but she does not listen and leaves with Daisy. Benjamin, whose days had just begun to improve, is now alone, with no one to share his sentiments with. He asks Queenie why he is different from all the other kids and why everyone hates him, to which Queenie calms him and says that he is the special one and that everyone will soon realize this. As the days pass, Benjamin grows stronger and stronger, as if his age is reversed. His hair began to grow, and he now appears to be in his 60s. Benjamin has only Queenie to talk to, who has miraculously given birth to a baby girl. Although she still takes good care of Benjamin, he is unhappy because he believes his value has fallen as a result of Queenie's actual daughter. Benjamin is saddened, and the changes in his body are also concerning him. He is getting fitter and stronger every day, but he is unable to understand what is happening. One day, Benjamin leaves his house in melancholy and ends up sitting by the seaport. A ship's captain named Nike approaches him and hires him for the day. This is Benjamin's first day at work, and he feels great. Moreover, he enjoys Nike's company. At the end of the day, he begins to feel tired and realizes that this is why his mother never lets him do anything since she is well aware of his health and truly loves him. Realizing this, he decides to go back home. On his way back, a man in a car approaches him and asks if he needs a ride. The man is none other than Benjamin's father, Thomas Button. He takes him to a bar to spend some time with him. Although Thomas left Benjamin years ago, he still loves him and keeps a watchful eye on him. After spending some time in the bar, Thomas drops him off at his house and asks whether he can meet him frequently, to which Benjamin responds with a yes. He then walks into the house and apologizes to Queenie for leaving without telling her. He spends a few more days in the old age home before becoming bored and deciding to embark on the maritime adventure with Nike. He bids farewell to all the members and is then approached by Daisy, who wants to accompany him. But Benjamin tells her that this is not possible and leaves, promising to write letters for her wherever he will be. Benjamin's maritime trip begins. He writes letters to Daisy wherever he travels. Over time, Daisy develops into a stunning woman who now works as a professional dancer. Furthermore, Benjamin is now in a relationship with a married woman. He kisses her, understands what love is, and writes a letter to Daisy describing all of this. Unfortunately, things do not go well for Benjamin, as the lady abandons him after being blackmailed by her ex-husband. Benjamin continues his voyage with his buddies, who enjoy each other's company. After a few days, World War II begins, and Nike and his team, including Benjamin, decide to serve their army with their ship. But, as usual, things do not go well, and the entire staff, including Nike, is shot dead by the enemy, but Benjamin survives. This is really disturbing for him, and he questions whether anyone who is in a relationship with him will die. Devastated, he returns home, but Queenie, seeing how young he is now, is unable to identify him as Benjamin. After learning that Benjamin has arrived, Daisy eventually makes her way to the old age home. To her amazement, Benjamin has grown into a good-looking young man who is also her age. At first, she is unable to recognize him, but after sharing some childhood secrets, she is certain he is Benjamin. They hang out and spend time together. During this brief period, Benjamin realizes he isn't good for Daisy and decides to leave her. Daisy proposes to him, but he doesn't reply and departs. Later that day, he is approached by Thomas, who is suffering from a serious ailment that is causing him to die. Thomas asks Benjamin to accompany him. He reveals to him that he is his father and that he abandoned him as a child, believing him to be demonic, but has since realized that he was mistaken. Thomas takes him to his home and shows him images of his biological mother. He tells him that he can die at any time and that he has designated Benjamin as his successor. He apologizes to Benjamin and expresses his desire to see Dawn with him before dying. Benjamin feels enraged and storms away, questioning how he can believe in someone who abandoned him years ago. Eventually, he goes to Queenie and tells her everything, and she advises him to forgive his father. Additionally, Benjamin has already watched his loved ones die and now secretly has affection for his father, so he puts aside his rage and forgives him. He stays with his father until he dies. After his funeral, Benjamin decides to reconcile with Daisy and move on with his life. He rushes to respond to her marriage proposal but discovers that he is late and that she has moved on with her life. She now has a boyfriend who also happens to be her dancing partner. Absolutely devastated, Benjamin returns home, convinced that this is his destiny. However, after a few years, the reverse-aging Benjamin, who is now in his late 20s, receives a letter informing him that Daisy has been involved in an accident and is being treated at a hospital. Benjamin visits her in the hospital, where he discovers that her leg was fractured in the accident. Furthermore, her lover had left her because he was a gold digger, and now that she cannot dance, she is useless to him. Benjamin tries to comfort her by claiming he is always there for her whenever she needs him, but she yells at him and forces him to leave, outraged that her career is over. After a few years, Daisy pays Benjamin a visit at the old age home and proposes to him. Benjamin, who has realized how essential Daisy is in his life, accepts her immediately, and they both marry. They spend time together and do everything Benjamin has always wanted. Benjamin has never had such joy in his life as he does with Daisy as his wife. The cherry on top is that a year later they become parents to a gorgeous girl. Benjamin can imagine his future as a baby, just like his daughter, and he does not want to be a burden to Daisy. One day, after leaving a note for Daisy, he departs, stating that he does not want to be a burden on her in the future and that he will always write letters to his daughter. Furthermore, he has bequeathed all of his riches to Daisy and has advised her to marry someone of her caliber. Then Benjamin embarks on a global journey to discover the world, more specifically, to see someone like him. During his voyage, he writes letters to his daughter, expressing his desire to be with her, to pick her up from school, and to do her shopping, but he is unable to do so. Many years later, Daisy, now in her late 40s, receives a call from the old age home, which is now managed by Queenie's daughter. She arrives at the old age home and is informed that they have found a teenage boy who knows nothing other than his and her names. Furthermore, they informed her that they had reached her via the information in his diary that had her contact details. Daisy hasn't seen the boy, but she is certain he is Benjamin. She approaches him and finds that he has completely transformed into an early teenage kid with no recollection of his past. She quickly resolves to live in the old age home to look after Benjamin. Days pass, and Benjamin ages backward to become a 5-year-old kid cared for by Daisy, who treats him like a grandma. He is mischievous and inquisitive like any other little child his age, just like he wished to be when he was a baby by the brain and an old man by the physique. After 5 years, Benjamin is now an infant. Daisy, who is now in her early 60s, looks after him. To return his love, she is taking excellent care of him. One day, while sitting in Daisy's lap, the infant Benjamin gives her a short gaze as if to thank her before passing away. Caroline becomes emotional as the story concludes and admires it, only to hear from Daisy that this is not a made-up story but rather a true story. Daisy also reveals to her that Benjamin Button is none other than her true father. Caroline bursts into tears at hearing this, overcome by emotion as she realizes how much her father loved her. As the truth is revealed to Caroline, Daisy sighs deeply and dies, marking the end of the film.
I hope you enjoyed the recap. If so, then give this video a thumbs up. And yes, if you want to be the first to know about my new videos, hit the subscribe button right now. It may seem worthless to you, but it is a huge motivator for me to keep going. I'll see you in my next video. Have fun and keep watching the Movie Explainer.